Good morning and welcome to today's presentation on communication and leadership. I'm Dr. Greg Niemeyer, direct the Office of Continuing Education in Psychology at the American Psychological Association and also the Center for Learning and Career Development within the Education Directorate. So on behalf of the Center, on behalf of the Education Directorate, and on behalf of the American Psychological Association, whether you're joining us live on site or live online today, welcome, welcome, welcome. Before I introduce to you Dr. John Klein, today's presenter, let me just say a word about housekeeping. If at any point you want to ask questions throughout the presentation, feel absolutely free to. Delighted to have your contributions. If you're joining us live online, all you have to do is in the lower left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a tab for questions. Click that and you will see that a questions email comes up and you can just email your question into us. We'll be sure to get them to Dr. Klein to respond to. Just be aware that if you do participate live online or live on-site, that you too, with whatever you say, will be recorded and you will have made a contribution to the presentation in perpetuity. Okay? So without further ado, let me introduce to you Dr. John Klein. Dr. Klein joined the Troy University faculty in 2000 as a professor of education, and he became then the director of the Institute for Leadership Development in 2003. He's previously served as the provost and as the highest-ranking civilian employee at the United States Air Force's Air University at Maxwell. Dr. Klein has also completed the federal program for senior executives at the University of Virginia and also the JFK Summer Program in International Security at Harvard University. I'm delighted to tell you that he's the recent recipient of the Algernon Sidney Sullivan Award as well. The Sullivan Award is presented at select universities throughout the United States, recognizing the recipients for excellence in character and humanitarian service. And certainly we appreciate Dr. Klein's being here and his humanitarian service in joining us to talk today about communication and leadership. Please join me in welcoming Dr. John Klein.
Thank you, Greg. Well, I am happy to be here today, and I guess every speaker is always happy to be wherever he is, so I'm happy to be here. And to talk to you about communication and leadership. Now, all three of my presentations tie together, and they try to overlap a little bit. So the first one has to do with communication and leadership, because that's what we're all about here, is communication and leadership. Now, before I begin today, the question is often asked, are leaders born or made? And can you learn to lead? And the answer is yes, you can. Yes, you can. Leaders can be developed. We wouldn't be talking about leadership development if leaders could not be developed. Now, at the end of the third session today, I'll tie the three presentations together with just a few words that are probably worth remembering. Now, on to communication and leadership. I have often said, but I actually coined this back in 2008. I was looking for something I could quote and it didn't quite say what I wanted, so I said this. Now, the gratifying thing is soon after there were very similar quotations that appeared, and you can find many things that are close to that right now, but this is the way I originally said it: if you can't communicate, don't lead. So how closely are communication and leadership tied together? Pretty close. That's all there is to it. You must be a communicator. Now, my article, and I've got 3 articles out there. These are not scholarly articles, as I had written in the past. These are just some articles I was invited to write by, of all places, the American Society of Military Controllers. I got tied in doing a lot of training for them, and I know nothing about the controlling field. I'm not sure I know much about psychology, but the thing is, these are 3 things that are very practical, and especially all of them I think are important. The last one may be very important, but I supplied these so they're available and you can read each of them in 10 or 15 minutes or that kind of a piece. But I said that you must, if you want to be a leader, listen effectively. We'll talk about that today. We'll hit on it a couple of times. You must engage in two-way feedback. If I had more time, I would just say the essence of it is, however, you must look at the feedback you're getting as a leader and you must give appropriate feedback. That's another whole subject, but it's one that's pretty important. Third, this one speaks for itself. Think before you speak or act. Now, I know all of us have had times we wish we'd have kept our mouth shut a little bit longer. Maybe we would have wished that we hadn't sent an email that we did. I've learned long since to put that email on hold. Think about it. Don't even address it until you're ready to send it. Many of those then I don't send, and I'm usually better off if I don't. Be dual focused. We'll spend the whole second time here with you today talking about, are you focused on the mission, getting the job done to the people? And the answer is yes. You have to be dual focused. And finally, building community, which is another whole subject worth talking about. But that's what's in the little article that accompanies this, that you can look at it if you'd like to. They're important, but I chose something else to say today about leaders and communication. Now, this is what we're going to talk about. Leadership, especially the attributes of leadership and the styles of leadership. And then communication, I'm going to present just a kind of a simple model that I came up with years before, and I still think is one that helps us look at all the aspects of communication. And after we talk about that, I'm going to get pretty simple. I'm going to keep this at the skills level. Now, one thing I found out years ago is the higher ranking the people, the more they appreciate hearing those basics again. So in my teaching, as I went to the Air Force Air University, which I knew nothing about when I went to, I taught people that were coming through officer training school, and they would say, oh yes, that's old stuff, I've seen that. But by the time they got to the major or lieutenant colonel or colonel level, they said, that's the stuff we need to keep hearing. And so following what I learned years ago, we'll keep it pretty simple. Wow, reading, listening, writing, speaking, and nonverbal. Now, I said if you can't communicate, don't try to lead, but let me tell you what I mean as I'm talking here today about effective communication and effective leadership. And by the way, I will look at the camera some of the time, and I'll look at my people here who are giving me feedback, so I can do both. So when you see me looking away from the camera, I'm probably looking at some pretty girl sitting here in the front row. Now, communication, to me, is simply the effective sharing of meaning. You can find many definitions of communication, but it really comes down, are you effectively sharing the meaning with the people that you're communicating with? Are you as a leader sharing meaning with the people that you are leading? Are you as a follower sharing meaning with the leaders that you're following at that time? So effective sharing of meaning. And I focus on servant leadership. I didn't say being a slave to the people. You don't necessarily always do their wants, but a servant does what's best for the individual and the organization. So leading to serve others and the organization. And foundational to what I talk about is servant leadership. So, some attributes of leaders. I think it can be captured with these three things. Character, because that's who you are. All the attributes that make you the person you are as we strive to be a person of high character. Competence is what you can do. Competence certainly in your subject area, certainly in your area of expertise, but also leadership competency. But then third, you must have confidence. Would you follow a leader that didn't have some confidence? You know, years ago, armies were led into battle by somebody that blew a blast on a bugle. Now, would you want to follow somebody that went toot, 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 toot? I don't think so. You'd want that strong, confident blast. That's why Paul said 2,000 years ago, who would follow the sound of an indistinct bugle into battle? So character and competence and confidence, as I'll mention again a couple of times today, if you have the right character, if you are who you pretend to be, in other words, you don't have to pretend, and if you have the right competencies, you will gain the confidence you need. So, your belief in yourself and your ability to lead others. Now let's dwell on each of these just a little bit. Here are some character qualities that I found on something several years ago on the internet. These are not necessarily my top 5, but they're all pretty good. And you can see what it says right there. Inspiration, an inspirational leader. Somebody that causes others to do their best. That's a pretty good character trait to have. Somebody that's courageous, that perseveres, and we'll talk some about persevering and the importance of that perseveres to accomplish a goal. Honesty, yes, I like to deal with people that are honest, people that can be trusted. Fair-minded, yes, I want to deal with people that treat people fairly. Forward-looking, absolutely, and we'll spend some time on the last session here today talking about the importance of having a vision. Now, just a question, you look at those as you're watching this, just how would you rate those? By the way, I don't agree with the rating they came up with, but this is just kind of fun to look at. So you have to rate them. Which do you think is most important for you? Which is second? Which is third? Which is fourth? Which is fifth? Now, if I have at least 30 or 40 people in the audience, every one of those comes to the top with at least 1 or 2 people. So, just for fun to see how these 1,000 people, and I didn't do this, this is something I found that somebody else had done. So, let me just show you what they came up with. You think what your top one is and your second one and so on? Well, this is what they said. Honesty was number 1. Vision or forward-looking was number 2. Again, some people put these in a lot different order. I didn't come out with this exact order. Inspiring, yes, you must inspire and motivate people. We'll talk some about that today. Fair-minded, yes, we want somebody fair-minded. Courage, yeah, we want somebody with courage, not discouragement, but courage to do things. So, just saying there are a lot of character traits. We're looking for the kind of character traits. They're your core values. That's who you are. That's what you want people to believe about you because that's who you try to be. So character is important. Competency. Now, if you're from the Washington area or maybe other places, you'll know what OPM is, but most people in my audiences have not a clue what OPM means. And I tell them it's a pretty doggone large employer, I think maybe the biggest in the United States, and it is the Office of Personnel Management, as all the people in this room know. Well, OPM has this list of competencies that they think everybody, when they make it into the senior executive level, will have. You're measured against these 5. So they became pretty important to me a good many years ago. So, can you lead change? Well, that's pretty important. That's why actually the last presentation here today is on leading change, implementing change. Can you lead people? Well, of course. That's pretty important. If you're a leader, you have to be able to lead people. Do you have business sense, business acumen? You know, even a nonprofit organization has to be run as a business. A family has to be run as a business. Anything you lead, there are certain business traits you have to have. Results. Aren't we always after results? Sure. So is it results driven? And these are not in any particular order, but the last one is so important. You must be able to communicate, and they added build some coalitions, build community, build team. So those are the 5 competencies they had. Now, you know what competencies you need for your job. We're always trying to improve those and trying to improve the competencies we have as leaders in our leadership skills and our abilities. Confidence. If you exhibit character, that will help you on your confidence. I think people of poor character are always thinking, what if somebody finds out? This is not who I really am. And the higher you go in leadership, the more important this becomes. Because the more people are out to kind of uncover things about you. Competence? Well, yes, if I'm competent at what I'm doing, I feel pretty confident about it. If I'm not competent, I probably not ought to be leading that. That's all there is to it. Can I think strategically? Do I have vision? We're going to really focus on this some in the last presentation. Do I have the big picture? Do I have a plan how to make it come together? Do I set solid priorities so the right things happen? Can I handle adversity? You know, one of the things is when things go wrong or the call is against you, how do you as a leader respond? Good leaders may get in a corner with their associates and talk about it, but they don't want to show too much doubt, being afraid of the situation. We admire people that handle adversity. We look at people that have personal adversities in their life, and I tend to pretty much admire those people that handle some real adversity and just keep on going. And how you look. Now, don't get this confidence mixed up with cockiness. You can be very humble and still have confidence. Do you present a picture of somebody that looks competent and confident and has character? Somebody that acts that way, and somebody, because you feel that way, fairly confident, you can display it. Well, just thinking if you have the character and the competence and the confidence, then you're pretty well set if you have all of those to be a leader. Now, there's many different styles of leadership, and you can go and look this up, and some people have 8 or 10 or 9 or 7. I've always kind of liked these 3. Now, let me tell you, sometimes people don't think if you're a servant leader you can be authoritative. Let me ask you this. Probably a lot of you that are watching are parents. Do you think, as you try to do the best for your family, for your children, do you think you can serve them very well if you don't sometimes show authority? So the kids say, well, we've decided, we voted, we want to go play in the middle of the street. Kid, you won't play in the middle of the street because I care about you. Simplistic example, but you get the point. Yes, servant leaders must have all these. You must be authoritarian at some times where you tell people how to do, and this is the way I want it done. Obviously, we know that many times when we're working with colleagues and so forth, it's very good to be participative. Inviting the input, but listen, if you're the leader, it comes down to you. One of the things I have found to be a problem is people say, well, this is what they wanted to do. I said, yeah, but you're in charge. You're in charge. I'm sorry, you're the one that has to take the responsibility for this. Delegative, oh, that's something I'd like to talk about for a long time. I'll hit on it briefly today, but you must know how to delegate. It's not just pushing stuff off to people and say, you do it. It's making sure you have a lot of things lined up. And when you first start delegating to a new person, it takes some time, which is why people don't learn to do it the right way. Now, authoritarian is good when the time is short. If I needed all the tables in this room set up a certain way, we had to have them in the next 3 minutes, I wouldn't say, you guys get together and decide how to do it. I'd say, here, grab this table over here like this, grab this one, do this, we'll get the chairs and we'll get it. Do it my way. And if you don't know exactly what we're doing, you haven't done it that way before, it's pretty good. If followers lack the experience and the knowledge, then it's important. When I absolutely have to have things done a certain way, because that's what's going to be set up. That's what has to be done. But it only works if you respect me as a leader and respect my authority. Just think about coaches. Team players are better respect their authority. You don't have a winning football team or basketball team or any other kind of team if the leader doesn't show authority and earn that authority, earn respect. So authoritarian is good at times, very, very often. Participative, it's good when I trust that you know what's going on. You've got experience. A lot of you have more experience than I do, which is also where delegative comes in. Followers have the knowledge. You know what to do. Hey, set it up like we did last time. They do it. I don't have to watch it. I need teamwork. You know, if you have teamwork, you often get good decisions and you get really good buy-in when you can have participative. Because even if it doesn't go your way, you had your input. You had your input. But guess what? If I'm the leader, I'm still responsible. Remember, responsibility comes with leadership. No matter how things are decided, if you're the leader, you're the one that's responsible. Now, delegative is appropriate when a leader must assign some responsibilities. As you get more and more responsibilities, you can't do it all yourself. Now, sometimes you think I can do this faster myself, but think out ahead. If you take some time helping this person do it, in the future you can say, take it and run. So it's kind of a long-term thing of thinking what I can do if I delegate these things. I have to trust you and know your competencies. I'll say a little bit more about this after a while, but it takes some time to train people. But in the long run, you do yourself a favor. I'll say this again because it's so important. You do yourself a favor because you've now spread out the work. Secondly, you've done that person a favor because that person learns the skills which that person wants, which helps that person progress, and you've done the organization a favor because you spread out the work. But I expect you to make decisions along the way. I expect you to make decisions because I realize you can do that. But although I trust you and know your competencies, I'm available and say, if you got a question, here I am. When I used to have a lot of people working for me, my secretary always knew when somebody was delegated something, that person could get in to see me that day. She always saved little blocks of time which people could come and see me. It was never, well, he can't see you for 3 days. If they were working on a project for me, they had immediate access to me. We figured it out. Didn't have to wait long. So, delegation requires some responsibility on the part of the leader. Oh yes, the leader remains responsible. Now I find that really all styles of leadership can be rolled under these three. I've done it this way for a long time. I find it's a useful tool to keep in mind. So, effective leaders must use all styles. Effective leaders must be able to use all styles and use the right one at the appropriate time. And effective leaders focus on getting the job done and on the people. That's why the whole next presentation focuses on this extremely important point, because I have found too many leaders that focus on one or the other. And there are negatives for focusing on just one or the other. So you must focus on the task and the people, on the mission and the people, on the people and the processes. Now, earlier I said if you can't communicate, don't try to lead. So I've spent just a short amount of this time on leadership, but it cuts through everything, as does communication, since if you can't communicate, don't try to lead. So let's look at 3 models. Actually, I came up with these in the first book I ever wrote, and I co-authored it with a guy named Bill Eadie. I've lost touch with him where he is now. It was called Orientations to Interpersonal Communication. And there were so many ways of looking at leadership and complicated kind of definitions and models that showed the sender and receiver and all this and that. Well, I kind of broke it down to this, or Eadie and I did. So, this is the most basic. Some people see communication as a self-action. Now let me ask, have you ever been an actor in a play? Have you ever learned some lines for something? That's very self-action oriented. What you do is, when it's your cue, you act, you say what? Irrespective of what the next person does. You really learn your lines. I used to be in a lot of plays. I learned the cue, said my line, it was up to the next person to take it from there. Now, we know that communication is a good deal more complex than just a sender and a receiver and the message. So you might say, well, communication is not just a self-action, it's an interaction. So you have a communicator sending a message to a receiver, but you've got that feedback. Again, as we said earlier, you must have feedback. As you communicate as a leader to people, you also have to seek their feedback and welcome it. And you have to give feedback so people know that things are going okay or what changes need to be made. Pretty good as an interaction, but not good enough. Our final one, this is more accurate. Communication not as a self-action or interaction, but as a transaction. A total picture with many, many factors in the middle. I mean, the time of day, the factor of whether it's a webcast or I had you all in here together, how you feel, how much you know, what else do people have in their mind. There are just hundreds of other factors. And to be an effective leader or speaker, you need to take these factors into consideration. So if communication is a large transaction, then it's a lot more complicated than we sometimes think. And even those of us who have been doing this for a long time forget how complex it really is. We don't know what's going on in someone's life. We wonder why somebody's acting a certain way. Then we learn their mother's been in the hospital. She's near death. You didn't know that. Ah, that makes a difference now as I interact with you. Which comes down to something I say later, how important it is to know things about the people you are leading. You must know your people. So, now we're going to get on something that is so very basic, you say, my gosh, Klein, are you going to spend most of the time on these basic things? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I could talk about communication theory. I've read about it. I could talk about leadership theory. I've read about it. But I'd rather talk about things that we all know but need to be reminded, and things I need to be reminded of constantly because I don't do it as well as I should. Now we'll spend more time on the last one, on speaking, because how you present yourself is so important. We'll say very little about reading. Spend a little time on listening because that's quite important. Nonverbal will come back at us a little bit later in another one, so I'll say something about it here. And writing, I've taught all-day seminars on writing. Oh, which by the way I should tell you, so this will probably take all my credibility away. When I went off to Iowa State University in 1963, I had to take the ACT. It was new then. My English was 16. That just kind of blew all my credibility, didn't I? Of course, it had to do a lot with punctuation and spelling and grammar, which I didn't know grammar. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, for crying out loud. All things that can be learned. Now it's funny because I can teach this stuff. Not perfectly. I'm sure I make some grammatical errors today as I speak. We all do. We do things differently sometimes when we write than when we speak. Notice I said differently, not different. I'm working at it right now. So let's think about reading just very quickly. You know, there's times we really must skim. Sometimes I want to look and say, see what this is all about. Hey, I do that before I start a book just to see if I want to spend time on the book. I look quick down what the chapters are. I skim through and look at little things. I say this because sometimes we get them mixed up, believe it or not. Scanning, sometimes I say, I think that was right. I think that was in chapter 3 up in this. I look to find something. Yes, very valuable. But you know, sometimes we don't study enough. Sometimes we get so carried away because we're looking at so much things, so much social media, so many things that we're reading the newspaper quickly and so forth, that we forget what we learned when we were in graduate school or as an undergraduate. And I know some out here today are probably in graduate school now. But sometimes we need to be reminded that we need to study to learn. Now, different people do it different ways. I always found the old style, pen and pencil, paper, if I wrote down notes as I went, it helped me. Now, that may not be your style, and electronic is okay. It doesn't work as well for me. But the point is, leaders must do all these things. Leaders must be readers. Some things to keep in mind. Read a lot of different kinds of materials. Don't read just stuff in your area of expertise. Read some other things. Broaden down. Find out what's going on. Building your vocabulary. I'm glad I worked at that when I was young. It's harder to build it when you get old. So those of you who are young, and everybody that's watching is young compared to me, I do often say to the kids, they wanted one of the younger professors to come, and so I did. And then they all kind of break into I say, wait a minute, I'm not even 78 yet. Each year it has to go up a little bit. Build your vocabulary, looking as we've all learned for the contextual cues. So many times we read and get hung up, and if we just read a little farther, we'd say, I know what it means. Such simple things, but we need to be reminded. You know, just learning the affixes and the prefixes is good. So when you see ante, before, poly. Poly. Well, it doesn't take long till we can find out that means many. How about the suffixes such as less, useless, worthless? That means something, I guess. Ology. Let's see, I've heard of biology and sociology and psychology, so ology must be, the study of, I've got it. Now, those are just natural, but there's other ones that we're not as conscious of that can really help our reading and our learning and our understanding. Just root words such as love. When I see lovely or loveless, when I begin to see that love, I know what it refers to. Again, this is a simple one, but I'm telling you, there are a lot of times, this is all there is to knowing meanings of words. And then I have always found, I look up a word. It's so easy now to Google a thing. I used to keep a dictionary beside when I was reading, so I could look it up, write the word down, and make it a point to use it several times that day. Use it as often as I could. I claimed it that way. Simple stuff, but we need to be reminded these old simple things still work. Well, listening. Now, leaders must be listeners. I think it's so important that in our leadership development minor that I have at Troy University, we actually in the first course read a book on listening. We talk about listening. We practice it because most of us need to be better listeners. Okay, so I've written some books on it. I'm not a very good listener. My wife would often say to me, John, why don't you read your own books? I'd say, yes, ma'am. See, I'm in the South. You say, yes, ma'am, in the South. I'm just telling you that. But say, why don't you read your own books? And I'm not the listener that I ought to be. So it is important. You must be a listener. Now, I want you to think about this. This is important enough to dwell on just a little bit. There are different parts of the whole process. And sometimes we think if we received it, we've got it. That's not enough. You receive it, you attend to it, you pay attention, you understand, which means it's meaning something. Not how many times do we listen, but it doesn't register with us? I mean, I don't think I'm the only one that has to say it too often. So we listen, we pay attention, then we have to grab and attach that meaning. Remember, communication's the effective sharing of meaning. We have to remember it. Gets to be more of a problem as you get older, but remembering it, you think you will. And sometimes it calls for a response. Not always, but you have to go through the first 4 steps. Now, just want to involve you a little bit if you got a paper and pencil there, or if you want to do it on your computer, I don't care. It has 10 questions. I want you to, you can number from 1 to 10 as you go, and think about you means this is usually true about you. O means it's occasionally true, and S is just not true about me. This will just your gauge of how well you do at these. So if you want to be a little bit interactive here, we will be. Now, I like to listen to people share things about themselves. I'll be honest, usually, maybe I should say sometimes, occasionally, seldom. I didn't put sometimes because you'd have 2 S's, so I put occasionally, on occasion. When someone explains something to me, I have trouble explaining it to others. Yes, I usually do, or yeah, sometimes I do, or no, I don't have time. No, seldom. Third, I remember an individual's voice even when I've not heard it for a long time. Yeah, I usually do. Occasionally. Seldom. 4, people don't like to share their ideas or things about themselves with me. Now, that's usually the case, for whatever reason. Occasionally that's true. No, that's seldom true. People like to. 5, I don't particularly enjoy listening to inspirational, entertaining, or humorous speakers. Don't have time for that. Usually, occasionally, seldom. 6, speakers' nonverbal behavior or voice affect my understanding of their message. That's usually true. Occasionally true, and that's seldom true. Whoops, too fast. 7, I can recognize how a speaker's information fits with what I already know. That's a big one, really. Yeah, I usually can. Occasionally, seldom. 8, I like to listen to music, audiobooks, news, or sports when I'm in an automobile. 9, I often question and ponder a speaker's ideas. I usually do. Occasionally. Sometimes. I don't question what experts have to say on their subject of expertise. Be honest now. Usually, occasionally, sometimes. Now, if you took the time to do all of those, then let's just look and see what that means on this simple, it's not a valid test, it's a shorter version of a much longer test. For questions 1, 3, 7, 8, and 9, here's how you do it. For 1, 3, 7, 8, 9, if you gave it a U, give it 3 points. If you gave it an O, 2 points. If you gave it an S, 1 point. And you reverse it for the other questions for 2, 4, 5, 6, and 10. Seldom, an S is 3. Occasional, O is 2. Usually, 1. Now, don't make too much out of this, but I did this so you'd remember there are different steps in the listening process, and we sometimes forget that and think, yes, I heard what he said. No, it's more than just hearing, more than just receiving. It takes attending, assigning meaning, remembering very often, and responding sometimes. So, okay. Relationship. 1 and 4. The 1 and 4 questions involved how well you understand the speaker, so you can see what your score is if you add up 1 and 4. Is it 2 or is it 6 or someplace in between? Same with informational, gaining the information. Appreciative, that's a kind of listening. Discriminative and critical. Now let me say something about each one of these. There's one kind of listening we do when we're trying to establish relationships. Sometimes we should listen when we're trying to understand people, not just to what the person is saying, but who the person is. To be an effective listener, you have to focus on all of these. In other words, you have to be able to have a relationship, and we'll talk about relationships a little later. Yes, there's many times, very often, where the main thing is to get the information the speaker's talking about. That's important. There's also times you just kind of appreciate it. That's why we listen to certain music. That's why we listen to some speakers. We just kind of want to be motivated. We just want to hear what's going on. Sometimes you have to be discriminative. When you're a leader, you have to discriminate so you can make decisions. So it's important while you're gaining information and keeping the relationship open that you also are able to discriminate. And times you have to be very critical. I have to listen critically. When somebody's presenting something to me and it's going to have a lot of money tied to it, I better listen critically and make good judgments. When my kids, when I was growing up, would tell me stuff, I better listen to critically to see what was really going on there when they'd ask me something. One thing I found out is it's nice you have children when you're fairly young, because by the time they get to be grandchildren, you're glad to send them home after they come for a few days, that as much as you love them. Now I'm into the great-grandchildren thing, so there we go. Abbreviated test, not a valid measure, but it helps us understand the different types of listening. So, 6 quick listening tips. You have to want to listen. How simple is that? How many times do you go places you really don't want to listen? Well, if you don't want to, you may not do a very good job. So basic, but one of the most important things. Want to listen, you have to focus on the speaker. Doesn't mean you have to stare them down all the time, but if you're focusing on something else, oh, how much of this do we get? How many times do we do this? I don't care what, if I'm doing this, I really am not focusing on what the speaker's doing. Physically involved. You know, you can sit back like this in a chair, and maybe you're listening, or you can kind of lean ahead, as all of you are here, with kind of pretty good attention here. So that's pretty good listening. I can't tell what you're doing out there, but we'll see. Don't tune out dry subjects. Sometimes I've tuned out a subject and later on I found, ooh, that was something I should have listened to. That's why we're going to talk so much about how you present things here today in this particular hour, because your presentational skills will help people focus on a subject that they might have otherwise thought was dry or unimportant. But if you do it and present it right, you'll keep people's attention. You must accept responsibility for listening. Like today, it's not really my responsibility, except I am trying to make it, as palatable and as appealing as I can, so you will listen to me, so you won't have too many things going on in the background. And here's a big one. Try this sometime. Pretend that you're going to have to go out of there and repeat the information, the main points, the things the speaker talked about. Sometimes I even do a little experiment. It's called, I think it's called double talk. I don't know, but where I will say just a few words like, I want you to repeat after me, and you'll all say, I want you to repeat after me. Then I'll say the next thing, and I keep stopping. It's amazing. When you're finished, you can remember everything I said because you're repeating it to yourself. Because you can listen to a lot more words than I can give you. Even today, as people begin to speak very rapidly like this and get up to 200, 250 words a minute, sometimes like this, even then, you can actually process more. You read faster than that, most of you, unless it's heavy-duty reading. So you can use that time to keep thinking as you go, what if I have to repeat this and tell somebody else when I get out of here? What if my job rating depends on being able to repeat this? That will make you be able to do it. So listening is important. Again, receive, attend, understand, remember, and respond. You must receive it, you must pay attention, you must understand it. That's where the sharing of meaning comes in it. And then you must remember it very often, or at least the high points. That's why I take notes, because I might not remember it, and the notes remind me. And oftentimes you must give a response. It's terrible when you've been sitting there and they say, well, Greg, what do you think? I wasn't quite ready because I wasn't ready. I wasn't listening. I, by the way, have found when I've called on students, instead of saying, what do you think, Greg? I'll say something like, Greg, you've had a lot of experience in such and such. At least it keeps, he's ready to focus, which, by the way, if you do that, the rest of the audience likes you better than if you pick on somebody, because they think, what if he picks on me next? That wasn't something, I don't plan everything I'm going to say. Things just come out from my experience. That's a point worth remembering. Now, writing, I don't want to spend too long on this, and I want to save some time for speaking, and I am ready for any kinds of questions at any time. I really am. And I can adjust and still finish on time. I really can. So I want to talk about 3 things on writing, and that's accuracy, brevity, and clarity. Those are the ABCs of writing. And you can learn to write more effectively. Have somebody proof your work, then have somebody that's proofed it explain why they did it the way they did, internalize that, and you will learn from it. That's what I did. I'll tell you a story. I told you how poorly I did on my ACT. My second English course, and I'd gotten a C in the first one, and I went to my teacher. Her name was Carolyn Arrington, Mrs. Arrington. I said, you understand, this has been over 50 years ago. I said, Mrs. Arrington, I don't do very good in my English papers. Well, she said, John, you don't do as well as you should because you have some grammar problems primarily and punctuation, which you can overcome. Would you like some help? I said, yes, ma'am, I would. She worked with me twice a week, an hour each time. And by the end of that semester, I'd gotten an A in her course and never got anything but A in English. So I went ahead and majored in English and speech because I liked English. Oh, by the way, another side note. 45 years later, I thought, I don't think I ever really thanked her. So I thought maybe I can find some of her descendants. She was pretty old. I mean, she was probably almost 40. That was pretty old to me when I was in college. So I found there was a Paul Arrington Jr. I said, I'll bet you that that's his son because her husband's name was Paul Arrington. So I call on the phone and this woman answers and I says, I really would like to talk to your husband because I want to tell her how much I thought of her mother, his mother. His mother taught me so much and I never really said thank you. And her name was Carolyn Spikes Arrington. She said, I'm Carolyn Spikes Arrington. The time I did it, I was in our 60s. She was probably in her 80s, and I thought, oh my gosh! So I quickly thanked her and sent her something, which is another message. Say thank you. Say thank you when people help you. But it's never too late, but it's better to do it early. Sidelight. ABCs. Okay. Structure, content, presentation. Obviously, how you structure things is important. Now, this is not what you, the writer, wants to do, but what you want the reader. I came up with a method, actually came up with one with the Air Force, and you can still find it, Tootsie Felt. The objective is, well, actually the one I came up first was Tootly Fest. The objective of this lesson is for each listener too. Not what I planned to teach, what I wanted the listener to do, the student to do. Then I came up with Tootsie Felt, and Tootsie Felt means not Tootsie felt good and Tootsie Felt. The objective of this speech is for each listener too. I also came up with the objective of this document is for each reader too. I've come up with some others too. Listen, it's kind of cutesy, but it's not. It focuses you on what the receiver needs to do, not what you want to do. See, like, what are you going to do today? Well, I'm going to teach them how to do this. No, what are they going to learn? So if you will start by structuring, so whatever you're going to say is for your receiver. See, my objective today isn't what I want to tell you. My objective is what I hope you will learn, what I hope you will take away. Well, that's all I'm going to say about the structure. You have to have good points and so forth and good supporting material. Content, I'm not going to say much about that. You better know the content. You're the content experts. But it starts then, if you're going to tell somebody else, how you structure that to tell them what it is. A little bit on this, but not much. The accurate presentation. These are the things I cover if I have a long time. Obviously spelling, never one of my strong points. Sometimes I do exercises on all of these when I'm doing workshops or have a half day or an all day with people. They're like me, they're embarrassed when they're finished with a test. Still am. Take a look at this. One of those is spelled right and one of them isn't. just write down very quickly the one that's spelled right. Don't say first one and second one. You can, but it's better just to write it down. You'll do a better job. Just quickly as you can, take the one that's correct. We'll want to take a couple minutes on this. I see some frowns in the room here. I don't know what that means exactly. Puzzled looks. Wish I could see you. I wish we were Skyping back and forth where I could really see you and see what you guys are doing out there. The audience here is talking among themselves, I need to tell you. Trying to help each other. Quickly as you can. We're not going to take much time on this. I'll give you just a few more seconds and then you can look at them and we'll see. Okay. We'll look at these and then we'll, okay. Okay, can you see on the slide there? The second anoint is right. The first coulee is right. The first supersede, irresistible. Second development. Actually, all right, the two words is the right way, but it's become so common now that I thought, well, I'll let you have a break on this one. The second separate, the first tyranny, the last harass, and the first desiccate. Now, I want to know in this room if anybody got them all right. I'll bet you nobody out there got, maybe somebody got them right. What gets embarrassing is most of you didn't get all but one right. If you're like most people, you missed 2 or 3 of those. Yeah, I did the first time. I know them now, of course, but don't give me another list. I actually did this with a whole bunch of senior executives. These are people that were, well, if you put it in military terms, a senior executive is equivalent to a general officer. So these were leading leaders. I had a whole room full. I mean, I had maybe 60 of them in here. I used this very same test. Only 2 got them all right. I said, don't worry, I won't tell your people. I won't tell your people. Okay, spelling is important. That's why we have spell check. I'm amazed at how many kids in their papers don't use spell check. I'm amazed. As a parent, they don't. Now, spell check will sometimes send you the wrong direction, but you can look at it and say, nope, this is what I want to do. That's all for accuracy. Brevity and clarity, so simple. It requires us to get rid of unneeded words. It requires good structure and expression. It requires us to edit what we write. Wait a minute. Let's think about that slide a minute. What did I say? Requires getting rid of unneeded words, requires good structure and wait a minute. Maybe I meant to say, strive to be brief, seek to be clear, edit what you write. Hey, I'm having fun. How about this? Be brief, be clear, edit. Okay. So, I probably went too far, but I'm trying to show you that so many times, this to me is one of the biggest problems I find not only with students, I find it with scholarly writing. Editors often find it when you send it in. I know I've been through that process. I know I've been edited many times. I know I've been embarrassed when they send stuff back. That's some years ago. I don't go through that anymore. I'm past the scholarship side of things. I think I could still do it maybe. Or even this, if I go to the one in between, the point I'm trying to make is edit. See, one of the big problems we have is we're writing a paper and we're just like the students, and some of you are students, and you said, you got to send 3,000 words, so we have to keep adding words. I tell everybody, write a 5,000 word essay and trim it down, it'll be much better. Write more than you need and trim it down is better than writing less and adding to it. Less is always better if it communicates. It usually communicates better than more. 5 guidelines. I'll read these through. I'll read them with you. Keep on target. Do not go off on tangents which are not relevant to the current issue. Avoid excessive or extraneous information, unneeded explanation. Avoid unnecessarily lengthy, wordy, and verbose sentences. I think you're getting the idea now. Active voice, not passive voice, should be used. Edit to be brief, short, and concise because nobody wants to pour through unnecessary piles of verbiage. Okay. So I profaned every one of those. I did. Oh, by the way, I had to put pour, P-O-R-E, is the right spelling. I've had people say, you spell pour, P-O-U-R. I said, if you're going to pour something, you do. But if you're pouring over something, that's different. But you're also educated, you knew that. Now, I think this is much better. Keep on target. Avoid extraneous information. Avoid long sentences when you can. Use active voice. Edit to be brief. Well, there was a little bit of humor in this today, and I didn't tell anything you didn't know, but I still think it's worthwhile to remind ourselves we need to work on our writing at all times. And some people are more skilled than others. Doesn't mean you're not very intelligent and not very competent. Get somebody to proof it. And then learn from what they proof. That's what a lot of us don't do. Ah, good, it's okay now. Learn. Have somebody that'll sit down and say, this is what you should do. Oh, I found out the students that do this learn. So I think we're all students. I plan to be, as long as I'm on this planet, best I can. Now, speaking effectively, I do want to spend a little time on this, but we have a question back there, and I should have gotten to it sooner. What is that? Right?
Yes. This question goes back to the style of leadership.
Okay.
How can someone address differences in leadership styles? As I've moved up in leadership role, I have had the experience where my direct supervisor has a very different style than myself. He is much more authoritarian and poor communicator, manages by email, and I'm much more a mix of participative and delegative in my approach to leadership, e.g. speak directly to people, and more rational, collective-oriented. I'm finding more conflict with my supervisor, and I'd like to change the nature of our relationship, but it's challenging because he doesn't seem to respect or agree with my leadership style.
And that always is a problem. When you have a leader that won't really be open with you and respect what you do, it is difficult. And don't get too frustrated. You have to live with it sometimes, but you can certainly learn yourself. And you're learning to be a better leader every day. I try to keep learning to be a better leader, a more effective leader each day. And so you need to keep on, and remember, you didn't say anything about being authoritative. There's times you must be authoritative. And maybe you can learn from him the times when he's authoritative and it's good, and the times when he's authoritative and it's not. And going back to something that Hersey and Blanchard coined years ago, situational leadership is pretty doggone important. So my point is, it'd be nice if your leader would open up and be more receptive, but you can even learn from what are poor examples, what you want to do. And I applaud you for being open, for trying to use different styles. And remember to use the authoritative style too. That's a very good question. Yes, okay. Thanks for asking it, wherever that's coming from. Well, I'm going to spend some time, and I could spend longer than I've got. I can also make it 10 minutes. I can make it 10 hours probably. I'm going to keep on the basics. This is going to keep on the basics. I've written a couple books on speaking. One was one I wrote, made no money, used it for the Air Force, and there's a million copies out there. And you, by the way, you can find it as a PDF. If you put Listening Effectively, John Klein, you'll find it. It's very simple, geared toward the Air Force, but all the points are valid for anybody. Another one's one that I published some years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know, something like that, with Prentice Hall. I've done the same thing on listening. By the way, you can find a listening text out there as a PDF if you're interested, and you'll find it easy to correspond with me by email if you should have any questions. So, speaking effectively. Well, I said there was a Tootsie Felt. Anytime you're communicating, you should have an objective that's geared towards your audience. Not what you want to say. What do you want them? What's their takeaway? Always think that way. I find sometimes doing this and getting it well organized takes quite a bit of time, but it pays off vastly in the communication that goes on. The objective of this speech, presentation, whatever it is for each listener too. It's always about the listener, which is one of the big secrets in communication anyway. It's always about the other person, which, by the way, is the whole bottom line for servant leadership. It's always about the others, the people that you're leading and the organizations you lead. So, general to specific. You know your objective. This, if I had to tell one slide and one slide only on speaking effectively, this is it. This has everything. Know your objective. Know your Tootsie Felt, in my case. Organize your main points to support the objective. Use supporting material that fits your audience. Something that might fit junior high school might not be the same thing that we might use for college-educated people. Maybe because we're not quite in a level where we can identify with some of their things, but also they haven't had the experience to identify with some of the meaning and what we're saying. So think about your audience. I certainly today, even though these just kind of come out of me, I'm thinking about who's out there. And most of the time I'll hit it right. So you support the main points of the audience in mind in delivery. That's where the communication comes. If I have enough time, I'll spend a little bit of time on delivery, which is the simplest and yet most misused part of presenting in front of an audience. So, content is at the heart. I don't know if you know the name Demosthenes. He was an ancient Grecian orator, lived over 2,000 years ago. He's the guy that's supposed to have practiced by putting pebbles in his mouth and practiced by talking toward the ocean, towards the seashore. Because if you can talk with pebbles in your mouth towards the seashore, you can probably do pretty well when you take them out and don't have all that water around. I don't know if that's true, but we do know that he was a great orator, a great teacher of how to orate, how to speak. And he was once asked, what is the single most important characteristic of effective speaking? He said, delivery. Said, what's the second most important characteristic? He said, delivery. Said, what's the third most important characteristic? Delivery. He overstated the case because content is at the heart of good speaking, but delivery reveals that heart or that content. So let me talk just about the physical behavior a little bit. Again, I can talk a long time. I really would welcome questions. If you want me to ask me something to kind of stump me, that's okay too. I know enough to say I don't know, or let me think on that, or try to give you the answer that I can come up with. I want to think about eye contact, voice, and speaker credibility. Now, that's the only slide I've got on that because I can just talk about it. Now, when it comes to speaker delivery, I break it into 5 things: physical behavior, use of the voice, and speaker credibility. Eye contact's important. I think you can tell I'm making eye contact with you now, but here's the funny thing, my eyes are closed and you still might think I'm making eye contact with you, because it's not only the eyes, but the whole way I hold my head. Years ago when I was teaching at Mizzou, the University of Missouri, I was teaching a basic speech course, and I had a student that would always come into class early the day he was speaking, and he'd be in there and be some other students, and when I'd come in, that was okay, he'd sit down. I learned quickly what he was doing. I knew he was a blind student. He was getting up to get the feel of things. He knew where he'd be standing, and he knew where people would be sitting, and he would look at them. His eyes were closed. And yet it was as though he was making good eye contact, because you see, it's not only the eyes, but the whole way you hold your head. So we paid attention to him, and I gave him a good grade. And if I hadn't, his seeing eye dog probably would have torn my leg off. No, he was good, and I just had to say it's more than just looking at people. It's how you hold your head. Now, eye contact. 3 things. This is so important. Eye contact, first of all, shows that you are interested in the audience. If I look at you, even though you know we're doing this electronically, we're doing this long distance, we're doing it by television, you still get the feeling that I am looking at you. And when I look away, you know that I'm looking at different people in the room here, so I am showing an interest in my audience. Now, I have seen people that kind of look up here all the time when they're talking, and people look down the floor when they're talking, and people are looking out the window to see what's going on when they're talking, and people I don't know. I've seen people that the whole time they were looking down at their notes. I didn't know if they even needed them or not, but they were looking down at their notes the whole time. And I just really didn't think that person was showing much interest in the audience, but more interested in just making sure he said the right things. He was looking ahead to see what else was coming and so on. I had a student years ago. He became quite a scholar. Somebody, if you're the right place, he was at East Texas, I guess. His name is Stephen Beebe. In the field of communication, he became one of the experts. He was even the head of the National Communication Association, and he continues. I keep up with him a little bit on Facebook, if nothing else. He's a great expert in the speaking of, let's see, I got to think who it was. But anyway, he's going to Britain, C.S. Lewis. So he still studies all of that, historically speaking. But Beebe had done a study on his master's before he came, and I was directing his doctoral work at Missouri. And he came, and he had done this thesis, and it was on eye contact. And to make the long and short of it is this. First, he had an audience to come in. It's like a classroom size, 25, 30 kids. and the speaker would spend about 90% of her time looking down at her notes and only 10% establishing eye contact. That's 90% down and 10% up. Brought in a different group. This time she spent about half of her time looking down, half her time up. Brought in another one. She only spent about 10% of her time looking at her notes and 90% establishing eye contact. He found no matter what speakers he did this with or which audiences, where the speaker has used the greatest amount of eye contact, she or he was judged as being more expert. Further studies show it also enhances your credibility. Now stop and think about it. When you're talking to an audience and you look at that audience will consider you more an expert. They'll also think you're more to be trusted. So good eye contact shows an interest in the audience. Good eye contact shows that they trust you and they think you're an expert. Here's one other thing. Good eye contact allows you to adjust to the nonverbal behavior. So I can't really get the nonverbal behavior as I'm watching you, as you're watching me. I can simulate it because I've talked to enough audiences. I know about what's going on. I know it's harder to be focused in and looking when you're watching it on a webcast. I understand that. But in an audience, a typical audience, I can judge. Now I can't tell. You may just be nodding and smiling and thinking about what you're going to do at lunchtime. I don't know, but it could be. But you may also have that kind of bored look on your face, and you may be listening a lot. Gee, that made everybody laugh. I think I hit a chord there. So good eye contact. What describes it? 2 words. Direct and impartial. Not just looking here all the time. That's why I don't just look here all the time, because I've got people in the room directly at people, but impartial. Not staring, but moving around. Eye contact, direct and impartial. Movement. I've had teachers that would walk like this. This is not what I'd call really very good movement. I don't know if I walked out of the camera then. He's staying after me. Jason, keep it up. So I've had people do this. I had a teacher do this once. He used to go this all the way in graduate school. He'd keep going back and forth. Not really looking at us so much, but talking back and forth. We decided we'd discover how many times he walked across the room that day. Everybody would put in a quarter and their number down, and whoever came the closest got the quarters. We were having a lot of fun with it. We really were. You know, if it was getting close to your number, you think, slow down, prof, slow down. We did that, seriously. So good eye contact is important, but good movement. Now, what's good movement? This isn't very good movement. Moving in and out behind the lectern is not very good movement. Well, if you do it with purpose. Good movement is free and purposeful. I hope whatever I've done today, and I haven't really been thinking about it, I hope it was with purpose. Now, I know you're watching the slides, not on the ones I'm showing here. But as I do it and turn towards these slides, it maybe makes you look at the slides and see what's going on at that time. So it is free and purposeful. So eye contact is natural and spontaneous. Movement is free and purposeful. Gestures are an important thing. I've seen people plan their gestures. Okay, here would be a good place. I will hold up 3 fingers for those 3 points. Here I will pound on the lectern. Okay. Well, I've got 3 things I want to share with you today. I planned it, it went too good. And I mean, they're important. No, see, gestures have to be natural and spontaneous. I've got 3 things I want to talk to you about today, and they are important. It has to be something that's natural and spontaneous. Now, I also know on television you can't do too much of this. I know what it looks like coming at you. You can do a little bit more of that in a room, but you get conscious of this and don't do it. Also, I just know if you plan the gestures, this you say, but John, this is such basic stuff. Yes, it is. Now watch people from now on and see what they do. See how they use their eye contact. See how they use their movement. See how they use their gestures. So this physical behavior is important. But if physical behavior is important, wow, the use of the voice. Now, one of the things is quality. But I want to tell you something now. You cannot change the basic quality of your voice, but here's good news. It isn't, although it's important, it isn't something that determines how well people listen to you. I can listen to people that maybe have a poor voice if the person has everything else going for them. I took a look at some of the people I consider to be really great speakers. And quite often they have pretty ordinary voices. One of my good friends in Montgomery, Alabama, is a guy that was pretty nationally known as a minister, built a church from a few hundred to about 10,000. Now as a worldwide ministry. His name is John Ed Matheson. I would rather listen to him than anybody. He doesn't have a dynamic voice, but man, when he presents. And I think about people that I think are really good speakers. They don't have a wonderful voice. Now there are some things you can do. Here's one that's kind of dangerous to do this when you've been sitting here for over an hour. Sometimes, both of these are. The first one isn't too bad. Sometimes we just forget to breathe. One thing I found that's useful, I don't know if I do it unconsciously or do it anymore, I think I do, is before I start, take that deep, diaphragmatic, abdominal, that's a big word, isn't it? From right down here, take a deep breath before you begin. It's funny, when you're talking like this, it's funny what if you stop to take a breath, it does to your voice. It really is. Practice it some till it becomes habitual. Now here's the one that's really dangerous. Try yawning. I know I may lose you, but try it. Just try doing it. Maybe you can do it with your mouth shut. I'm going to open mine. Notice what that does to your voice box. If you did it all the way, it kind of opens it up. Gets rid of that tenseness. A yawn will do it. You get where pretty soon you can just, I did one right there. It showed a little bit, but I did it. A yawn. Sometimes when you're getting all tense, just take time to yawn. Now, would you guys wake up? Hey, if you're sleeping, wake up, please. I lost you. So, you can do something for quality. The next one you can do a lot about how intelligible it is. You know, sometimes we have people that, they use too many and ums and like you knows. And listen to yourself, you probably do some of that. A few of those are okay. Like they're okay. And I think there's other things we can do that are okay if we don't overdo them. But if you find yourself falling into the habit of too many of those things, after a while, it's kind of a turnoff. After a while, these vocalized pauses don't do much. Why not just pause? Why not when you just come say, and so what we should, instead of saying, and so what we should, get the and out. And when you pause and are quiet, it actually gets people's attention. So there's things that we can do to communicate more effectively. And sometimes, especially if you're in a fairly educated setting, if you use too much bad grammar, that will turn people off. Now me, I will tend to listen beyond it, although kids will find when I grade their papers, I'm a stickler on. I challenge them to write a paper, a 2,500 word paper that I can't find something to say. And I have some of them try very hard. Fortunately, I usually can find one thing or two. They say, you got me, Dr. Klein? Yeah, I know it. I was out too. But you can get me too. So they love it when they find slides that have a misspelling. They love it when I give them a paper that's got a grammar area because I invite it. I say, okay, you got me. Which is by the way, that's almost a leadership trait you ought to think about. Be willing to be corrected. Be willing to be corrected. How are you going to learn? So I tell my students, I say, I challenge you, and I know you'll find them because I write a lot of stuff for them. I write a lot of their materials they have to read. I say, find it. I'm going to say, you won't be the first. Every editor that I've ever sent things to has found something, no matter how carefully I thought I had it prepared. Every one of the scholarly articles, the ones I've written since, I make mistakes. My books, yes, they found all kinds of things in them. They really did. I'm grateful to my editors and all those people that were doing the reading. So a voice must be intelligible. Now the variety. As we think about speaking, don't you get tired of talking and listening to someone that talks at the same rate and the same inflection and the same volume and never changes a thing? So sometimes you go up. Sometimes you come down. Sometimes you do talk rapidly, but I wish on these, but there's not much news in them anyway. On the news programs, I wish they wouldn't talk so fast. And I've fallen into it too. But sometimes we can talk rapidly, and other times we need to slow down just a little bit to emphasize. Sometimes if you're going to say something important, you say, now something that's very important is that effective communication is the effective sharing of meaning. See, you paused, you thought something is coming. So volume, inflection, rate. I told you it was going to be basic stuff. I told you we're talking about basic stuff. I think we get more out of looking at the basic stuff. If you can pick up 3 or 4 things today that you can use, then it has been time well spent by you and by me. Again, I could talk about communication theory. I could talk about leadership theory. Yes, I could. But I'd rather just tell you some things that I have learned and some things I've observed. And a lot of them are things that I have to learn the hard way over and over. And since I do, I figure you probably do too. So we talk about them. So we talked about the importance of physical behavior. We talked about use of the voice. Let me say a few words about credibility, and I hope you have a few more questions. And want to save some time if you have some. What does it take to be credible? First of all, it does take expertness. Do you want to listen to somebody talk about a subject if the person doesn't know anything about it? No. And I've told you, you enhance your expertise in the eyes of others by your eye contact, by how you come across, by how you look interested in your audience, by the way you gesture with real meaning. So expertness is really important. We want to listen to somebody that's an expert. But would you listen to an expert if you couldn't trust the expert? The guy may know, but I don't think he's giving me the straight scoop. So these are the 2 major dimensions of source credibility. I used to do a lot of studies, publications on what it took to be a credible source. The top ones were always expertness and trustworthiness. How competent you are, how much you can be believed. These are key. But maybe the most important one is, are you sincere? Now, sincerity by itself won't do it. You could be the most sincerest person in the world and you could be wrong. You could be very sincere, but you don't know what you're talking about. You could be sincere in that your desire was to deceive me, so you could have sincerity. But I think these 3 things of expertness, trustworthiness, and sincerity becomes very important. Sincere about 3 things. Sincere about your subject. I know whatever area of psychology you're in, you chose that because you sincerely believed it was something you wanted to be in. I don't understand psychology. I will tell you something interesting. All of my courses in leadership, in my minor in leadership, fall at Troy in psychology, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? So I thought it's kind of exciting because I agreed to do this some time ago, and it was after that the chancellor said, John, I've been thinking, we've got a new dean over there in the College of Education. By the way, at Troy, unlike most places, it so happens that psychology, I don't care whether you're talking about clinical psychology, social psychology, all of psychology is in the College of Education. But we've got an outstanding leader. A new one came in. He said, because this guy's so involved in leadership, and we want to make your whole institute get a real burst of energy, not just your minor. We do other things in it too. So I'm going to put you over there. I said, sounds good to me. So he said, now we'll have to take your courses, which are now in sociology, because that's where you established the minor some years ago in social sciences. We're going to move it to psychology. I said, good. By the way, I didn't tell the chairman down there I was coming up here. I thought if I do bad enough, I don't want him to know it. If I do okay, I may let him know afterwards when I get home and see him tomorrow. So, I know you're sincere about your subject area, and you should be. You should have a devotion to it, a passion for it, a desire to use it, desire to tell other people about it. You should desire to grow in it, and I know you all do. I'm sure you do. And I think the fact that you belong to the APA says something about that. You believe in the discipline. You must have sincerity about your subject. You must have sincerity about your audience. If you're teaching and you sincerely want to do the best you can with your students, if you're in practice, you want to sincerely do the best you can with your clientele, whatever it is, whoever your audience is, whoever you're directing, you have to be sincere about wanting to help them. That would be a basis of servant leadership, that you do care about the people that you're leading, that you do care about the people you're dealing with, that you do care about others, the way that I'm sure most of you care about your families if you have families, so you must be a servant. But the last one, you must be sincere about yourself. I didn't say take yourself too seriously. I don't want to take myself too seriously. That can get me into trouble. That's why I want to be open to what people will tell me and their feedback when they tell me things that I'm doing that are good and things that aren't, so I can improve. But I do have a sincerity about myself that I want to be the best person I can. Now, if I didn't, would I be very interested in my character? Would I be very interested in my competence? Would I want to gain confidence? No, I wouldn't. Would I want to be the kind of leader that can be situational, that can fit the situation? The kind that can be authoritative when I need to be and should be? The kind that can be participative, as I often must be and want to be because I learn so much and get people involved? The kind that's delegative. I'll say something about delegation yet in the next hour. Not as much as I'd like to, but I'll say a few things about it. So, leadership and communication. One more thing, which I'll cover more later, and that's nonverbal. Nonverbal is so important because I can say all these things, but as I've suggested already about the eye contact and the movement and gestures, the nonverbal says so much. And if somebody says one thing and does something else, what do you believe, what they say or what they do? Are artifacts around us. You come into my office, you see the things in the wall, it communicates things about me. Stop and think about the things around you. Do I really want that out there or not? They communicate. I went into Maria's office today. I could see she has a lot of little games all the way back from Rubik's Cube and everything else. They communicate a good side of her, to me. Our space speaks. I learned because I've been to a lot of international countries. While I might get up close and talk to you because we've talked a little bit, you know, in some countries I wouldn't want to get this close because, you know, it's a standoff. In some countries, I don't know if you can catch this, but I would go to a guy and I can hear, I might go to somebody, you know what that is in Egypt? You're treating me like a dog. Just all these kinds of things. I might hand you something to drink like this hand, that's okay. But now I want to show you something. Okay. With this hand, no, that's an unclean hand. Don't give food with that hand. Which is why in some countries, if they want to really punish you, they cut off your right hand. You have to deal with your left hand the rest of your life. Just little things like that. So, the space speaks and the space I give you and the time talks, and I know we're running out of time here, so that's appropriate I say time talks. How I judge time, how I use time, how I value your time, how I use my time, says a lot about me. Word choice, I can say the same thing to different people. I can say the same thing to Jason. I say, Jason, you're an idiot. Or I can say, Jason, you're a real idiot. I said the same thing, but one I was laughing. One you knew I liked you, but I wouldn't have said that. All the difference in how we say things. Current behavior we talked about, our long-term behavior. We judge leaders by their long-term behavior as well as their current behavior. There's a lot of responsibility. Oh, that word came up again. There's responsibility when you're a leader. Responsibility falls on you. Many people want the title, they want the authority without taking the responsibility. But you can rest if you have a servant attitude and you take responsibility. You'll be trying to do the right thing for the right reasons to help people. So we looked at leadership and some attributes and styles. We looked at communication model skills, reading, listening, writing, speaking, and nonverbal. If you can't communicate, don't try to lead. Are there any more questions? Or any from right here? Okay.
Do people judge women's expertise differently than men's when they use the same gesture?
I think sometimes that is true. And also it's true that your gestures are connected to the person. So while somebody might use a gesture that's accepted and some it's not. I think we're getting away from it, but I think, yes, most people do look at women and men differently.
Do you have particular advice for women, especially when they are speaking primarily to groups of men?
I think anything I said today is okay. I think whenever you've got the other gender, you must be more careful on things. For example, I'd be more careful with women in the audience than I might be with just men, especially if I wasn't televised. Not that I'd say anything but I have to be careful. The things I say might be taken differently. So I think we're going to have to always be conscious of that no matter what. So yes, I would just say, remember there are a bunch of men here, but remember, hopefully you know them well enough and they do value you for who you are. I don't know if that was a good answer, but I'm saying I think we have to be conscious. I think you do treat people differently. Only because we talked some was I comfortable in doing what I just did with you. If I hadn't known you and hadn't talked any at all, or we hadn't made a lot of eye contact, I wouldn't have done that. Where I might have done it with a man easier. Mm-hmm.
And this last one's more of a comment.
Okay.
Thank you for your helpful presentation.
Wow.
Don't minimize the importance of the basics. I very much appreciate hearing again information about how to be an effective speaker and always room for reminders and improvement.
Give that guy a raise. I like it. Or woman, whoever it was. Well, okay, I think we only got 10 minutes left. Why not? It's always better to finish a little early than to go a little overtime, so let's just call it quits. And thanks, you guys. Okay, thank you.